All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Yuno Learning. And here we are presenting another webinar on IELTS Speaking. So let's look at how to conquer the IELTS Speaking Part 1. So before we dive ahead into the speaking and intricacies of how you speak in your IELTS exam, we need to know some things about how your IELTS exam is being conducted. So your IELTS exam will last from 11 to 14 minutes. And throughout the exam, your session is being recorded on a day, and the data is kept so that whenever you ask for a reevaluation, it can be seen. So part one, you have the duration is about 4 to 5 minutes, and the examiner may ask 8 to 10 questions, which can be anything around your personal life, your hobbies, or very basic questions about your accommodation. Part 2 is monologue, where one has to speak on a given topic for around 2 minutes. This is a cue card where you're given a question and you have to elaborate that question for 2 minutes. Next, part 3, abstract question, where the examiner will ask 3 to 4 questions related to the part 2 topic. So this is how your IELTS exam is structured. Now, what are the criteria for assessment? So number one criteria is fluency and coherence. So when I talk about fluency and coherence, we mean that your answers have to be structured in a logical manner, right? So you should not be stuttering in between, least usage of fillers like or something like that. So these are known as fillers, and always use signpost language. So signpost language is when you use phrases that link two sentences together. For example, because, however, furthermore, as a result, or some other things. Second is lexical resource. Now, this might sound very fancy to all of you, but this is a simple terminology to say your vocabulary. So you should be able to use a wide range of vocabulary in your answers. Try to use synonyms. Try to paraphrase the questions. Do not repeat whatever has been asked to you directly. And try using some idioms off the top of your head. For example, once in a blue moon, uh, you know, apple of one's eye. So this is a conversational tone. Keep a conversational tone, and you can use some idioms to show the range of lexical resource that you have. Number 3, grammatical range and accuracy. Now, what is grammatical range and what is grammatical accuracy? So we all know that grammatical accuracy is how correct your tenses are, how correct your grammar, your punctuation, everything is. But when we talk about grammatical range, that includes your tenses. So do not get stuck on one particular kind of tense. Use all kind of tenses. Use present tense, future tense, or even past tense, given according to the question. Now, this shows examiner that you can switch between different various types of tenses, but also use different types of structures. For example, complex, compound, and even simple sentences to show the examiner that yes, you possess the capability to handle all of these structures. Last but not the least, pronunciation. Now, pronunciation is a part of, now when we talk about English language, pronunciation plays a key role. Sometimes, for example, students will mispronounce a word. As one of my students, I remember one time, a student mispronounced leave as live. So even though the sentence is correct in his head, the examiner will listen it completely opposite, because whatever you're pronouncing sometimes may leave the examiner puzzled. So focusing on your pronunciation, correct pronunciation for words that might sound similar is very important for you to keep. Now, before we start with the speaking part 1, let's know what kind of questions will be asked to you. So the questions are related to self, you and your family, your friends, school, dislikes and likes, hobbies, your favorites and plans. Now, a lot of the times when I take classes, the students just get stuck at these very basic questions. How? Because they've never thought about how they will frame their sentences. For example, a lot of times students ask me, how can we elaborate what my hobbies are? So take a time, sometimes take these topics and take a time to realize what you really like, how you really plan your things, what are your future goals sometimes, and try to frame them into proper coherent sentences. Because even though these sound very simple and very, trivial, a lot of the times you will not be able to put these into sentences if you're not familiar or clear on what you want. Now, what are the other things that you have to keep in mind? Whenever you start, you introduce yourself with your full name. Do not introduce yourself as, with your nickname or in a very conversational tone. Whatever name is given or printed on your ID, say that full name. Be confident and clear. Now, if sometimes even the students have a lot, range of vocabulary, they are equipped with the most exquisite tools of English language. The only thing they lack in is confidence, and that gives the impression that okay, maybe they're struggling with the language, but they actually are not. The only problem is they are not just confident enough in this. So always be confident and clear. So whatever you're trying to say, slow down a bit. You do not have to haze through it. You can take a minute. You can take 5 to 10 seconds to compose yourself, calm yourself, and make sure whatever you're saying is clear and crystal. Your speech is crystal clear, and your examiner can exactly understand what you want to say. So whenever these questions are asked, make sure that you expand your answers. So most of the answers may be simple, like, do you like ice cream, right? But don't just answer yes or no. Give reasons, right? It is not a simple one-word answer. We are assessing your conversational skills. That means I require more of you. I require you to answer, if you like ice cream, why do you like ice cream? Which flavor do you like? Something to give beyond a simple yes or no. Then paraphrase the question. Never use the same words while answering the questions. Paraphrase it in your own words. Make sure that you're answering it correctly. Use the correct tense by showing a grammatical range in actions. As I already said, if the question is something about you, what you had done in your past, let's say where you used to live 2 years ago, use a past tense. Use perfect tenses, use continuous tense to show that you possess the range of tenses and you know how to mold your tenses according to the question that is being asked. And for part 1 and part 2 questions, always make sure that you answer from 2 to 3 sentences, and it could be something. It doesn't always have to end with simple yes or no. You can expand it with simple clarifications of how you really like. For example, if you take the same question, do you like ice cream? How do you like it? Maybe you can talk about an anecdote that okay, your dad always used to bring you ice cream, or there's a particular flavor that you like about. Let's move on. So these are the things that you always have to keep on. Now, beyond all of these, beyond the very subjective and objective things, there is one more thing that you can add to your speaking test. So yes, you can work on your tenses, your vocabulary, perfect, your idioms, your range of sentences, your range of tenses. One thing that you should also keep in mind is your tone, right? So if I keep going on and speaking in one simple monotonous tone without ever making my pitch higher or lower, ever changing my volume, ever changing my stress in words, will you really like that? It will be a little monotonous, right? So let's always try to change and vary the tone that you're speaking in. Stress on certain words, and even within certain words, stress on certain syllables more. That will that will vary, that will show intonation and modulation in your voice, which will really improve your examples. Alright. So let's take this very first question that we have here is, do you go to the cinema sometime? That's a very simple question. How do you think you can answer this? Go ahead, move to the chat box and try answering this question in one of the few ways you think you can. I will give you about 5 seconds. Think about what you can say, maybe signpost a few things here and there, and tell me how will you take this answer. All right. So let's look at the sample answer that we have written here, and maybe in the future you can have a better idea of how to take these questions. So do you go to the cinema sometimes? I go to watch a movie once or twice a month, or whenever I have time. I book tickets to my favorite actor's movie and just head to the cinema hall. It not only gives me some relaxation, but also allows me a breather from my hectic schedule. So see, this is a simple question. Now, instead of just answering in one sentence, oh yes, I go once or twice in a month or whenever I have time, we try to elaborate this, right? For example, that I added that I like my favorite, whenever my favorite actor's movie is launched, I go to the cinema. And why do I go? Because it provides me with some relaxation and allows me a breather for my hectic schedule. So, breather is sort of a phrase that we have used here. And this is how we have explained one or two things so that the answer is just not a simple one or just one liner answer. Let's move. How often do you go there? So the same, it is a sequence of the same question. Let's answer how often do you go there? Think of it, how can you answer this? And try answering this in the terms. All right. So let's have a look at how often do you go there. So as I said, I prefer going to the cinema theater once or twice. So even if you have already mentioned this, right, that you prefer this, you can start by saying, as I said, I usually go with my friends and sometimes my family members also accompany me. We all have a lot of fun and the entire day is spent like so. This is how you may try to answer this. For example, you expand the answer by saying that who are the people you like to go with and what do you do there? How do you like it? Some extra details to not end it in one line. Let's move on to the next question. What movies do you like to watch? How do you think you can answer this? All right, so let's look at the answers that we have here. I love to watch suspense thrillers and action movies. However, since I accompany my family sometimes, I watch family dramas and romantic films as well. Therefore, I end up watching movies of different genres. So when you say the first line tells you what you really do you like. You like suspense thrillers, you like action movies. However, since you accompany a family sometimes, so when I say however, this is how I have signposted my language instead of just simply starting the sentence. I watch family dramas and romantic films as well. Therefore, I end up watching movies of different genres. When I say different genres, means different categories, different forms of, when I say genres, it's like the categories we're talking. Rom-com, action movies, and suspense. Let's move on to the next question. What did you enjoy when you were young? So let's think about this once. That what were the kind of movies that you enjoyed watching? What were the kind of shows maybe or the characters that you enjoyed watching? It could be anything. This is not essentially has to be, you have to quote a movie. It can be certain character that you like a lot, certain type of storyline, certain type of action genre, or anything about movies that you really liked watching. So take a minute, think how would you answer this question if you were in my place, and then we'll move to the sample answer. Here we go. I always preferred watching action movies as they kept my curiosity piqued until the end. I have watched almost all of the Bollywood action movies of Sunny Deol, Moreover, films like Border and LOC that are based on patriotism have always been on top of my list. See, the first thing that we're talking about is that a kind of movie that makes you curious, right? Piqued means that intrigues you, that really ignites the curiosity. Then I have watched almost all of the Bollywood action movies of Sunny. So then we quote a certain actor. Then you could say signpost again, use a linker like moreover. Films like Border LOC that are based on patriotism. So that's a genre of movie that you're talking about. Have always been on the top of my list. So at the end, we also incorporated one idiom. So we used different words. We used lexical resources. We used multiple sentence structures, and then at last, we also added in this way, you can always emphasize different types of structures and different types of tools in your answers that will emphasize or that will show the examiner how much of the command on language. Next question. How has your taste in movies changed over the years? Again, so this is a question that needs you to, tackle your mind or just rack your mind a little bit because this is not a very straightforward answer. So you have to take a time, take a minute to think about it. What kind of movies like you liked earlier and what has changed now? So take about 30 seconds, think how would you answer this and remember. Let's look at the answers. To be very honest, not much has changed in my preferences when it comes to films, as I've always loved to watch action-packed films since my childhood. Even now, the same kind of content fascinates. So let's say that nothing has changed in your life. You can simply answer by saying that there are no specific changes. But see how we have framed this answer. This is not a very simple answer, right? Even though we have said that there's nothing changed, we have still made sure that in the very first sentences, we have paraphrased the question. I'm just not repeating the question to the examiner. And then I've elaborated on what kind of films I've watched since childhood and I still watch. Then I've added that this same kind of content fascinates me till date. It can be a different answer also. For example, well, I think that lately I've been intrigued more by some intellectual movies rather than action-packed cinemas. I still remember in childhood I used to like action movies a lot because of the thrill they provided me. But today I'm more into calm and peace and the learning that movies or sometimes educational content has to provide. So that is one way of answering this question. And also, even if it is the same, can you still always remember to paraphrase the question, add in words, add in vocabulary and idioms. Let's move ahead. Now, how should you prepare yourself? We have looked at the answers, we have seen the answers, but how will exactly you prepare yourself for these kind of sessions? So always remember, the first part of your speaking is going to last for 3 to 4 minutes. And the duration of your answers is not controlled by you, but by the examiner. If at any point the examiner feels like you're taking extra time, the examiner will move on to the next question, right? And always, as I said, give answers, give reasons for your questions. If you give one word answers or one line answers, the examiner won't be able to assess you properly for your speaking skills. You can only showcase your flexibility or versatility if you expand your answers with questions like why, what, when, where. So you can keep these questions in your mind always that if you're giving, let's say, any answer to the questions, what is your favorite color? Then keep certain questions in your mind. Why? When was it your favorite color? Or what essentially in that color you like? Why, when, what, when? You always, so one of these parts will always help you expand your answers. Few things extra that you can do. Record your answers. So whenever you're practicing, as I said, you need to familiarize yourself with certain topics. For example, you need to explore what are your hobbies, right? So when I say hobbies, a lot of students can ask me back, ma'am, what are hobbies? Are these the things that we do in our free time, or is this something that you work for? So have a clarity on what common questions are being asked and what is your hobby. So hobby is what you like to do in your free time. So what kind of things do you like to do? Record your answers and see how you have been expanding. See if you're using any fillers in your answers. See what kind of vocabulary are you using. Then analyze those content, analyze those categories, and see where you can add some vocabulary. What kind of other words can you use? How repetitive kind of vocabulary have you used? Listen to your answers and understand where you're good. Always listen, record your answers and listen to them. Number one, check if you have modulated your voice. Check if you have used multiple sentence structures and check if you are sticking to the point. It is also very important for us to stick to what has been asked of you. If I ask you, what is the color of this chair? And you start telling me how it is made and the process, that would be no good to me because what thing I asked you was, what is the color of this chair? So we talk about what the color is, how it is achieved, or what other color options are available, or maybe just, but it is very important for you to streamline your answers to what has been asked of you. Then learn idioms and collocations. So as we know, idioms are certain words that do not stand for what they literally are, right? So whatever the literal meaning an idiom is, we always so idiom is something of a metaphorical tool. So idiom conveys a metaphorical meaning. So for example, let's say once in a blue moon. That means when you see something very rare, that is once in a blue moon. Apple of the eye. Apple of the eye means someone who's very dear and close to you. A carrot top. A carrot top is someone with a red hair. Then cool as a cucumber. So cool as a cucumber does not mean someone who's cool as a cucumber, but that means someone who's very calm. So these are metaphorical meanings. So some idioms can be used in the speaking test to enhance and show the examiner. I can also, there are other structures that I can incorporate in this. And let's move on to collocations. So what are collocations? Collocations are certain word pairs, right? Some words that always go together. For example, swift action, swift car, and utterly delicious, um, extremely ridiculous. These are few words. When you learn collocations, you will know how to put some adverbs or some sort of extra word before one adjective or a noun. So there are always certain pairs, and when you use these, your sentence sounds more, you can say, natural and spontaneous. For example, the sentence is that smoking is strictly prohibited. Now, if somebody says strongly prohibited, that even though that is not incorrect, that sounds semantically wrong. So these are the collocations which are used frequently. So you can go ahead, give a look at these collocations, how frequently these word pairs are used. Lastly, but not the least, practice with someone. So when I say practice, why is it important to practice with someone? Even though if you record your answers and listen to your answers, there's a very hard line or there's a limitation to what exactly you can figure out on your own. When you're talking to someone, they can point out your flaws. They can also help you learn more. Their ideas can also enhance your vocabulary and your content generation. They can help you with the modulation. They can point out where things are lagging and help you identify those core areas and work on them in a better. So these are the few tips that we can give you how you should prepare yourself. And make sure that whenever you're giving your IELTS examination, that even though this is a conversation, we are assessing your conversational skills, that you always have to maintain a little bit of logical fluency in your speech. It shouldn't be very informal. So be always confident and clear in your answers. Clarity is very important. A lot of the times you can do all of these, you can practice everything, modulation, intonation, idioms, collocations, but if you're not confident and clear in your speech, none of that would account if the examiner cannot understand. So if it is a computer-based test, make sure that your connection and your audio settings are proper. But if it is a person one-to-one interaction, make sure that all of things that you're talking with, you're maintaining a good eye contact with your examiner and you are using the right tone. So these are a few tips that we could talk about on how do you prepare your speaking part. All right. So lastly, let's look at if you have any questions, Drop them in the chat box. We'll discuss those before I end this session, and let me know. Let's take this time to take your queries on anything that you have that you might want to ask, or anything that you really you don't know about speaking yet. You can take this up right now. So drop your queries in the chat box. All right, let me see any queries that you have. I'll try to answer them for you. Anything that you want to ask about, how the exam is conducted, what any part that we discussed in the class today, any other tips and suggestions you want. All right. So there's one question in the chat box. Can we share personal stuff whenever we give part one answers? So let's clarify this. So whenever see the part one questions are essentially questions about you, right? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? So let's clarify that this what kind of personal stuff can you talk about? It doesn't have to be very personal details about you, right? Very peculiar details about your life. But whatever the question is, just try to keep it, stick it there. Like, just imagine that you're talking to your some sort of educator and trainer. So whatever details you can share with them, you'll only share those, all right? It doesn't have to be very deeply personal about something about you. Maintain maintain a line, maintain a certain restriction. However, these questions are about you, so you can answer them what you like. Of course, you'll have to tell them what is your personal preference in this. But these are not opinionated answers. They're just simply trying to understand that if you can use the language to convey your thoughts or ideas. So that's the maximum extent of personal we are talking about. All right. So that's your query. Anybody else who would have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer. Please take your time and type them in the chat box, and I'll be happy to take them. All right. So if no other questions, one thing that I would also like to mention here is that if anybody is wondering about your IELTS exam, so whenever you book your IELTS exam, your speaking is supposed to be either on the same day or 3 to 4 days after or before yours. So that is one thing you can. So with that, that would be the end of this session. Join us for our next live stream on Wednesday, where we'll discuss the tips and tricks for IELTS speaking part 2. A lot of students have issues with elaborating their and expanding their ideas and keep talking for 2 minutes. So let us help you out with the tricks that we have learned by engaging with our students and helping them overcome those obstacles. Thank you so much for joining today. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.